Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Quintana and I'm currently a lead activist for the Columbia University Democrats. In today's Liberal Boot Camp, we're going to discuss the rise in unaccompanied minor migration into the United States. Let's get right down to it. What's going on? More than 52,000 children traveling alone from Central America, fleeing poverty, gangs, and drug violence in their home countries have been caught at the U.S.-Mexico border since October, double the number from the same period from the year before. Thousands more have been caught with parents or other adults. Let's take a quick step back. What exactly is meant by extreme poverty and gangs? Children on this journey to the U.S. traveling through Mexico face murder, rape, and extortion. The expectation of sexual assault is so pervasive that females report being given vitamins, which are actually birth control pills. Along the way, migrants are bribed, murdered, maimed, killed, thrown off train tops, the works. So why make the journey? Young children are being forcibly recruited into gangs such as Los Zeta and MS-13. There is rape, murder, and violence in towns all across these countries. Girls are afraid to go to school because members of gangs go to wait at bus stops and outside classrooms and tell fellow gang members to, quote-unquote, pick their girlfriend. With a homicide rate of 90 per 100,000 in Honduras, 40 per 100,000 in Guatemala, life in this region is rougher than declared combat zones in Afghanistan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, respectively, have the world's number 1, 4, and 5 highest homicide rates. But why? This is what happens when corrupt institutions, pervasive gang activity, fragile democracies, and a culture of impunity meet the illicit drug trade and a very, very significant demand for drugs in the United States. While the number of unaccompanied minors has actually dropped from about 355 per day in June to about 150 per day during the first 2 weeks of July, we still have our work cut out for us. What say Congress? While surprisingly enough, there is no consensus between or amongst parties, the Senate Democrats' plan calls for roughly $2.7 billion to help stem the crisis, which is nearly $1 billion less than what Obama had originally asked for. The bill would provide funds to the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to care for the children, and funds for the State Department to go after traffickers and smugglers, as well as for public information campaigns to deter families from sending their children on these very, very dangerous journeys. The funds would also provide for the DOJ to provide about 10 more immigration judges, which is 10 more than the 40 judges Obama had initially asked for. Republicans in the House and Senate rejected it out of hand because it did not include any changes to immigration law. Now, what do the Republicans want? On Wednesday, they released their plan. The plan includes deploying National Guard and contains also legal changes to help facilitate the process of deporting the minors. The law that they would have amended is the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008, which currently guarantees children the right to remain in the United States while deportation cases are pending. More specifically, it requires that unaccompanied minors from Central America are returned to HHS within 72 hours. HHS would then attempt to place the children with family members in the United States or temporary housing and shelters until they were summoned to appear before an immigration judge. Given the nature of our current immigration backlogs, this could actually take years. The amendment the Republicans are proposing aims for minors who arrive illegally from countries that do not border the United States to be subjected to quicker legal procedures and to be deported more rapidly. The amendment would establish a time limit of 7 days for children coming from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, and who are in the custody of HHS and who decline immediate repatriation to have a hearing before an immigration judge. While this proposal is one that is encountering the most opposition from Democrats, it's important to remember that, strictly speaking, expediting the legal processing of these children does not mean, quote-unquote, sending back plane loads of children, as John McCain would have it, nor denying children due process, nor necessarily precluding them from having qualified legal counsel at the border before an immigration judge. Figuring out the logistics of how to actually ensure that children do receive qualified legal counsel at the border would be admittedly significantly more difficult if this amendment passes, which would expedite because of the expedited nature of the processing. However, it is crucial to remember that amending the 2008 law and due process are not mutually exclusive. That being said, it is completely unreasonable and cruel to hold hostage the possibility of a bill to address this humanitarian crisis as a substitute for comprehensive immigration reform that we haven't gotten. Hopefully, that won't be the case. Lawmakers are currently deadlocked on the plan, with both Democrats and Republicans saying that it was increasingly unlikely that they could reach an accord before Congress leaves town for a 5-week recess at the end of the month. But wait, there's more. The Obama administration is currently considering a pilot in-country processing center in Honduras, which would allow hundreds of minors from Honduras into the United States without making the dangerous journey. This would actually help hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids. If approved, the plan would direct the government to screen thousands of children and youths in Honduras. The center would be open to petitions for refugee status, and would give the Secretary of Homeland Security the ability to grant humanitarian parole for those who do not qualify for refugee status. It is estimated that about 35 to 50% of the children would qualify for refugee status. Critics of the plan claim that it would increase flow of immigration. They fail to understand, however, that the screening would happen before the children even get to the United States. It would happen in Honduras. And also that only about 1,750 children would actually be accepted. They also claim that it would redefine the legal definition of a refugee. Now, calling this a humanitarian crisis can be considered a political statement, so decide for yourselves. Section 101 of the Immigration and Nationality Act defines a refugee as someone who is located outside of the United States, is of special humanitarian concern to the United States, demonstrates that they were persecuted or fear persecution due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group, and is not firmly resettled in another country and is admissible to the United States. Now, here's an excerpt from a New York Times op-ed about an 11-year-old boy from Honduras, and I quote, "His father was robbed and murdered by gangs while working as a security guard protecting a pastry truck. 3 people he knows were murdered this year. 4 others were gunned down on a nearby corner in the span of 2 weeks at the beginning of this year. A girl his age resisted being robbed of $5. She was clubbed over the head and dragged off by 2 men who cut a hole in her throat, stuffed her panties in it, and left her body in a ravine. Decide for yourself. Does this count as reasonable fear or special humanitarian concern?" Other reactions? Very varied, actually. Graffiti denouncing illegals in Maryland, a mayor whipping up a bus blockade in Marietta, California, calls going out on YouTube for militias to get their weapons and boots. Here's one of my personal favorites. A couple of weeks ago in Oracle, Arizona, a small town near Tucson, Republican state legislator Adam Quasman heard that a group of unaccompanied minors were being brought to a shelter nearby. So he stood outside and waited for this bus. A yellow bus passes by, and he tells a reporter, "This is an abrogation of the rule of law," and he was able to see the fear in the faces of the kids. Turns out, it was a bus of YMCA campers. Awkward. Then we also have Governor Rick Perry of Texas, who claims their administration is in on this and somehow trying to lure children into the country so that they would grow up to be Democratic voters. Not to mention the fact that, albeit largely symbolic, he summoned 1,000 National Guard troops to the border this past week. Our friends over on the Tea Party wing claim that these children threaten our existence and that they are the bearers of the sorts of diseases that might have been found in the holds of 19th century ships. On the other hand, though, U.S. religious leaders and some compassionate conservatives are embracing the cause of immigrant children, denouncing actions like the aforementioned as un-American, unbiblical, and inhumane. Although Hillary Clinton didn't really provide a super clear answer during an interview, she did say that children should be sent back to their native countries, but also they should be reunited with their families, which sometimes requires children to stay in the United States. But how do you feel about due process, Hillary? What about the children who qualify for refugee status? What then? Talk to me, Hillary. But then again, we also have some very positive responses. New York City officials have formed a task force in response to the increase in unaccompanied migrant children. Nisha Agarwal, the city's commissioner for immigrant affairs, is leading a newly formed interagency working group to decide how to mobilize resources to best assist these children. And they've already done a bunch of really cool stuff. See the comment section for an interview with this rockstar to hear about all the amazing things that they've already done. New York City Council Speaker Melissa Quintana is urging the city to consider ways to house unaccompanied minors. Community-based groups that provide advocacy and services for immigrants met on Thursday this afternoon with the city, state, and federal officials to discuss how they could create a collaborative and coordinated strategy to meet the varied needs of these children once they arrive. How can you help? Support civil service organizations domestically and abroad that support migrant children and repatriation efforts. Please see the comments section for more information on organizations such as Kids in Need of Defense, KIND, and the Global Fund for Children, which launched a pilot program in 2013 called the Child Return and Reintegration Program, which helps ensure that children returning to the communities in Guatemala have access to basic services. The Texas Young Democrats have created an Amazon wish list, which is helping to buy basic necessities for kids along the border. Please see the comments section for the wish list. Might not seem like a whole lot, but it really makes a difference. These children really have nothing. Also, be proactive. Do you think that the in-country processing center in Honduras would be a good idea? Write to your member of Congress saying so. Check out the CU Dems Facebook page or the link in the comments section for a form letter/email you could send to your representative. As varied as reactions have been, it's outrageous, hurtful, and embarrassing that the leaders of our nation are speaking this way about children. I agree that something needs to be done to confront this issue and to afford these children expedited due process. But this behavior is wholly unnecessary. It is these preposterous spoken and unspoken theories, notions, and political considerations on the cusp of summer recess that have put arriving at a resolution on a standstill. In any case, I hope this video has helped you all become more informed on this complex issue and that it better helps you form your own opinions and your stance. Thanks for watching.